What's up, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube? Boogie2988 coming at your live once again through the power of the internet, and that's what you're listening to. It's a 45-minute long podcast that I try to do every week or every couple of weeks, in which I just talk for 45 minutes about a variety of things, mostly video games, and that's what I'm going to focus on today. So treat this like a podcast. Listen to it while you're playing your video games, while you're enjoying your life, out playing Pokemon Go. Whatever it is you do, just put it on in the background and enjoy. I think that you will. Before we get into it, I wanted to give a shout out to these guys. It's the folks over at Tentacle Grape. Yeah, they've got this Opie Orange flavored soda that they sent me, and I had to give it a shot. So let's see if it's any good. Oh, that's not bad at all. I like weird sodas and I like meme sodas. So as long as it tastes good and it's got a funny label, I'm probably going to buy it. I could see this in my local game store for sure. Now, if you want to get some of that Tentacle Grape soda for yourself with that big, juicy flavor like Oppa Orange, link is going to be in the description box below to their Kickstarter. Kickstarter starts on March 29th, so if you decide to back it, guess what? You'll be putting $5 into my pocket as well, and I thank you for that. And thanks, guys, for the free soda. So Gamergate 2.0 has kicked off. And pictured here right now is a Verge article that says the return of Gamergate is smaller and sadder. Well, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think a year from now, this thing will be fully embroiled. And honestly, Gamergate never really left. There's plenty of content creators, Nerdrotic, Yellow Flash, so many others, who have continued to talk about this topic, which is forced diversity in video games. And I mean, they also talk about forced diversity in just about every format there is. And you see it so much now in Western culture. You don't see it so much in Eastern culture. You know, Asian video games do not have this stuff in it at all, it seems like. But Western-made video games, Western-made media, anything made by Disney, all of it is just soaked in forced diversity. And this is the topic that I really want to get into today. And I have really got to gather my thoughts on it because there's so much. But I think it's going to be the majority of the talk, so I hope you can dig in. I would love to sit around and tell you everything there is to know about the original Gamergate, but I'll give you the shortest version. You had a group of people who very much did not want to see forced diversity pushed into video games, and I'll go ahead and address right here up front. There were plenty of bad actors there who were just angry about women coming into the space and making video games. Yeah, there were definitely bad actors there. But the majority of people did not care about that. What they cared about was forced diversity and the lacking of quality in video games surrounding that forced diversity. And yeah, some of those bad actors turned it into a harassment campaign. Like, some harassment definitely took place. If this thing happens again, some harassment will take place again. But the majority of, quote, harassment, end quote, was extremely overblown by the supposed victims, extremely overblown by, traditional video game media to make it seem considerably worse than it actually was. And for the most part, there was two major factions with the original Gamergate. Number one, the way that these game journals were, reporting video games to us was corrupt. I mean, even the way we were doing it on YouTube back then was corrupt. We were getting paid for game reviews. We were getting wined and dined and flown out to play games like Ubisoft used to make, Assassin's Creed and stuff. I literally got flown out to San Francisco to play a preview, and then they wanted me to post a review afterwards and wanted to pay me to post a positive review. Of course, we all know, history shows that I said no to that, right? But at the end of the day, that's the industry we were dealing with. And people wanted that to be fixed. Well, when it comes to gaming journalism, that never got fixed. They're still just as corrupt and as silly as they have always been. Still so obsessed with getting the clicks, the headlines, the things that get people in to view the ads. That's all gaming journalism is. And yes, I promise you, they're still getting wined and dined by the industry to make sure that they post as much positive reviews and as much coverage of their new games as humanly possible. That never went away either. The second issue is the issue that we're seeing again now, except it's considerably more widespread through the industry, and that is forced diversity. And look, I will say the same thing that everybody else that talks about this will say. I love diverse video games. I will play. You give me a video game based on a gay, straight, trans, short, tall, fat, weird character, I'm all for it. I go back to the Borderlands series and I look at Big Fat Ellie in it. I look at the gay characters, the trans characters. I think they're well written. I think they're well done. I think they're wonderful. And there are video games where the main character is a woman. The main character is an ugly woman. The main character is diverse in one way or the other, and I'm there for it. I play those games. However, that shouldn't be the only type of video game that's getting made. And in the West, we see it put into every single video game now. We see race-swapped characters. We see sex-swapped characters. We see characters that are not normally LGBTQ, somewhere on the LGBTQ spectrum. And every game has to have it. And that's what people were upset about back in 2014 during the original Gamergate. Now here we are 10 years later, and the situation has only gotten worse, and they're just going to be even more upset about it. But I challenge you, try to think of a video game that you've played, developed in the West, that doesn't have some sort of diversity that kind of just sticks out like a sore thumb. Give me diverse video games. Write a whole brand new character and make them a gay, a short person who's morbidly obese and blind in one eye and can only hear through echoes. And that sounds so interesting, I'll play it. But you don't have to stick it in every video game, and it doesn't need to be shoehorned in. That's the problem. So I had an opinion back when Baldur's Gate 2 got remade. There was a character that got added to this game that wasn't in the original version that identified as trans, and during the dialogue options, they would identify themselves as trans. Like, yep, I'm trans, used to be a man, now I'm a woman, da-da-da-da. And I had the opinion of, that was very poorly written, it was shoehorned in, and I don't know why they did it. Because when you do that type of thing, when you write it poorly, and you make it stick out like a sore thumb, you're not helping the people you hope to represent. And that's the problem that we're facing now. Is it all sticks out like a sore thumb. It's so frequently overdone. It's so frequently poorly written that you're doing a disservice to the people that you're hoping to help. And it sucks. It genuinely sucks. Not only does it often make for a bad experience in the game, not only does it make it sometimes hurting sales numbers, and worse, sometimes it can drag your game down. But at the end of the day, I think the biggest issue is it does a disservice to the people you're hoping to represent. And I hate it. I will go as far as to say that video games developed in the West, every game has diverse characters. And they will go as far as to race swap a character. They will go as far as to sex swap a character. They will make characters that are not normally on the LGBTQ spectrum somewhere on that spectrum. And every time you do this, it sticks out like a sore thumb, and it doesn't help anybody. It genuinely doesn't. What does help is when it's written well, there's a time and a place for it, that it makes perfect sense in the storyline, in the development of the story, of the game, of the character. The game itself is done well, and it's fun to play. I love stories that involve a diverse walk of life, something that I'll never experience in my life. You show me what it's like to be a skinny, young white man fighting dragons, I'm all for it because I never get to be that. You show me what it's like to be a 25-year-old woman graduating college, moving from her house. I'm talking about the game Packing Up, I think. Show me that one. That sounds great. Show me a perspective that I've never seen. I'm all for it. The game has to be written well. The game has to be executed well. The character has to be executed well. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be getting it right. And when you shoehorn these characters in to meet some diversity checklist so that companies like Sweet Baby Incorporated leave you alone, or because you get funding, or because you think it's going to make the gaming journalists like your video game more, sure, maybe those things are true, but gamers are probably going to dislike your game considerably more for having done it. And it's nonsensical to do this stuff. So right now I'm showing a little bit of game footage from Asmon Gold. And I want to point out that Asmon, as well as a lot of other gaming content creators and other types, they've never really let go of Gamergate. They're always willing to call this shit out when it needs to be called out. And I think it's important that we have content creators and gaming creators that are willing to do that. And Asmon's one of the largest by a lot. And he said something that I wanted to quote here. He said that cancel culture really can't cancel the game anymore. He said, what happens? You get 3 mean tweets surrounding your game? But I'll take it a step further and say that he can even help sell your game. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because Sweet Baby Incorporated is the reason Gamergate is ticking off again. And it's because they decided to go on the offensive. And I'll try to make it as short as possible because a lot of you already know what happened. But there was a Steam curator, Steam being the platform where you can purchase PC games, and curators there are allowed to make lists of video games that they either recommend or don't recommend. And this guy made a list of video games worked on by a company named Sweet Baby Incorporated. And by their own admission, they're a company that it gets hired to put this forced diversity stuff in video games and do it in a way that they like, and, supposedly do it right, do it well. Well, in very few of the instances that they've been hired have they done it right or done it well. Suicide Squad being the perfect example of when they did it, probably the absolute worst. One of the worst games to come out, and they worked on it. It's certainly going to be one of the worst games of the year. Well, Sweet Baby Incorporated decided to try to get this curator's list removed from Steam, as well as cost him his Steam account, which is, where he has all of his purchased games. You get your Steam account banned, you lose all the games you've ever bought. That's why this is kicking off. Because the folks at Sweet Baby, not because they exist, not because of forced diversity, not because they like to work on video games and do it poorly, not because they like to tank video games like Suicide Squad and make it one of the worst games humanly possible, but simply because they decided to attack this guy for doing what? Curating a list of games that they work on. Well, you know who else curates a list of games that they work on? Sweet Baby Incorporated. You go to their website, they list the games they've worked on as well. They're just afraid that as people see this list and they realize, they start connecting the pattern that certain parts of these big games that were successful sucked when it came to the forced diversity. Some of the more other games which were not successful at all because of the forced diversity, people are going to start connecting those patterns and realize that I don't want to play other games that they work on because of the forced diversity, tanking parts of, if not the entire game. And again, there are certainly people out there who do it for racist reasons. There's probably people out there who do it for sexist reasons. I'm not one of those people, though. And if you're listening to this, you're probably not one of those people either. I don't hate people of color. I don't hate LGBTQ. I don't hate women. I don't hate nobody. I don't have room in my heart for hate. I just want to play fun video games. I just want to enjoy my video games. I deal with, in my local Magic community, in my local life, I have LGBTQ friends. I have trans friends. I have to deal with their pain all the time, right? I hear how bad it is to be a trans person from my friend Emily all the time. Emily Saxton, I love you. The last thing, when I sat down to play a video game to escape real world, real life, when I sat down to play a video game to escape the political atmosphere we find ourselves in, the division that we find ourselves in, that my friends find myself in, my gaming community, my Magic community, my online gaming community, all of these people, my content creator friends, we're all steeped in it all day. I just want to be a fantasy wizard for a little while. And I don't necessarily want to spend that time having a trans character that was introduced just because they were trans, put into the game just to hit some diversity checklist, also telling me how bad that division is. I know. I see my friends in pain all the time. I know. By the way, I might be a white man, But I'm also disabled and morbidly obese. I know what it's like to get the shit talked out of you, get put down for something that you are, not something that you chose to be, right? I get it. I get it. Please let me have my video game. Please let me crawl into it. It doesn't seem like an unreasonable request. And if you're going to put a trans character in there, have it make sense and have it be written well. That's fine. And if they want to talk about how hard it is to be trans, I already know. But make it part of the game. Make it good. Make it fun. Make it interesting. Please. And then I'll still play it. You know what you don't see? You don't see trans characters in video games being the opposite of oppressed. In real life, you're trans, you're oppressed. You don't see them taking over, dominating, being supported and loved, and like the entire world loves them. Put that into a game. That's interesting. I would play that game. That's escapism. It's the opposite of what I'm dealing with in real life. Regardless, I'm so sorry. I guess you listen to these things to hear me rant, and that's good, because I'm definitely going to rant in this one. However, Sweet Baby Incorporated said one of the ways that they get hired is by bullying game companies into making sure that they put this forced diversity stuff in it. And in a GDC talk, one of the co-founders of Sweet Baby Incorporated said, tell them, take it to their marketing director and make them understand the value of what we provide. Because if they don't, they will. We will sick basically the cancel culture dogs on you and get you canceled for not hiring us, for not letting us write very poorly a small section of your game that we will make sure everybody hears about and knows about and sticks it in everybody's face, and that way we get hired for the next one. Well, Asmongold pointed out that it doesn't work as well as it once did. Maybe you get a few mean tweets, maybe a few people, but most gamers are going to ignore your shit now. The problem comes into the game companies themselves not understanding that. They can now look at things like Hogwarts Legacy and realize it. In fact, I would go as far as to say Hogwarts Legacy is a perfect example of the pendulum swinging. You know, in America, I've lived through the Reagan administration all the way to Biden. And in that period of time, I've seen the pendulum go from left to right to left to right to left to right. And with Hogwarts Legacy, boy, it swung a hard right, didn't it? Absolutely. This game sold gangbusters, sometimes in part from people who would not otherwise have bought it just because this game got canceled. But not everybody's got that message yet. And at the end of the day, you're still going to see these game companies fall for that bait. You're going to still see some of those games have been in production for years. They've already done it. They've already paid them. They've already hired them. It's too late. So these games are still going to be happening. But on top of that, games journalists fall for this every time. And they know what rage bait it is. They know how frustrated players get. They know how frustrated people who don't even bother playing video games but just care about this stuff get involved. They click on it. They share it. They love to shout harassment. They love to shout, I'm being oppressed. They love to shout all this negative stuff. When the reality of it is, all of this, the oppression in this case, the only oppression you can find is a list of video games that they worked on that was copied and pasted from their own website. That's the victimization we're finding here. In the previous Gamergate, that's what we saw, by the way. We saw a ton of claims of harassment that wasn't really there. And I let me go as far as to say that there was plenty of online harassment. I'll give you credit for that. There were lots of people tweeting nasty things at you that you probably didn't like to read. And a lesson that I've had to learn the hard way over the last 17 years or so that I've been an online creator is you just have to not read it, friend. Right? It's just mad words typed into your phone. Don't look at your phone. It's as simple as that, right? Real world oppression sucks. Not getting hired for something because you're fat, because you're ugly, because you're weird, because you're short, because you're tall, because you're gay, trans. Real world oppression sucks, right? Getting bullied and beaten up for that stuff, it sucks. 100%. I'm all for it. That stuff's happening to you. You call me and there's something I can do about it. I'll help as best I can. But I'm not so worried about online bullying anymore. Maybe when you're still a teenager, and you don't know that you can log off, right? But I have been one of the most ridiculed people on the planet online. And you know how it's affected my real life? Not at all. My friends still love me. My girlfriend still loves me. My family still loves me. I'm good. It's just a bunch of mean words on the internet. Some people have taken it outside of the internet, showed up at my home. That sucks. If somebody does that to you, obviously that sucks. If somebody's harassing you in public, if somebody's screaming at you in public, fuck that guy. Fuck that guy, right? We all agree, fuck that guy. But online harassment really isn't much of a thing. Don't get me wrong, if you're addicted to the internet like I was and you have difficulty getting away from it and you work and you play and you create content for a living, whatever. But if you're just a gaming developer and your job is sitting in a cubicle all day, doing meetings all day, working on video games all day, you probably don't really have to get online where it's at, right? You'd probably be okay. Now, I do think there's a lot of arguments to be made that, online bullying shouldn't exist, right? But it's no longer the victim card that it used to be. Because guess who's getting bullied online? Everybody. Mr. Beast gets bullied online. Look at some of these articles that come out about Mr. Beast. Oh, he only blind cured us because he's a bad person. He's the devil. He's Satan. There's so much. Mr. Beast is one of the nicest human beings you'll ever hope to meet. He's genuinely doing good things for the world, and he's getting bullied. And by the way, he's a straight white man as far as I know, and he's still getting bullied. So if it's happening to Mr. Beast, you're damn right it's going to happen to you too. It's going to happen to all of us. It's not an LGBTQ problem. It's not a woman problem. It's not a diverse problem. It's not a fat person problem. It's not a skinny person's problem. It's not a woman's. It's a human problem. It's a human problem. It's humanity. Do you get it slightly worse than the rest of us? Sure. Okay. We all get it. We're all going to get it. We all get it. There's a study done not too long ago that showed, my friend Weeks of Redemption brought this up on my locale podcast that we do, that fat people are the ones that get it the worst on the internet. More than LGBTQ, more than African American, more than anything else. I'm sitting here fat as shit, and I get it worse than everybody, and I'm telling you, log off. Log off. You'll be okay. But that's what these people do. They take that seed of truth and they exaggerate it and exaggerate it and exaggerate it. Because I'll tell you, your perspective really shifts about what harassment is. Once you've had a couple of lunatics show up at your front door to vandalize your home. Once you've had somebody throw bricks through your fucking window. Once you've been harassed in real life. It definitely changes your perspective. And my perspective has definitely changed. But we've seen that tactic getting employed here with Gamergate 2.0. We saw a Kotaku article go up that was filled with, leaving out important details like it was Sweet Baby Incorporated that went on the offensive to try to get a Gamers List banned and his account banned, right? And then we saw the creator of that article admit to leaving out certain aspects and stuff like that, talking about that in DMs. And now we've seen people quote that Kotaku article as if it were entirely real and entirely true, when clearly it isn't. And then it snowballs and it builds itself off. And just like last time, they call it a harassment campaign when the reality of it is it's consumers speaking out about what they do not and do want to consume, about the types of games that they want created. We saw this in the comics industry. We've seen it in the gaming industry. We've seen it in the movies industry. We see it in television. We see it over and over again. People saying, look, we love this thing. We love comics. We love games. We love shows. We love movies. We love Star Wars. We love Star Wars the way it's always been. Why do you have to vastly change it? Why do you have to build new Star Wars off a diversity checklist? Why do you have to build video games? We've loved video games the way that they were. Why do you have to build them off a diversity checklist? We've seen black-led games. We've seen African-American. We've seen LGBTQ-led games, women-led games. We've seen them my entire career, my entire time playing video games since I was born in 1974. These games have existed, always existed, will always exist. But they weren't built poorly, they weren't built badly, and they weren't built for the purposes of fulfilling this checklist. And consumers should be allowed to speak out about that and not have it be called harassment. And sure, again, there's a percentage of harassers in every online thing, in every online movement. There's extremists on the right, on the left, in the middle, in every religion, in every atheist movement, in every movement that there ever is and ever was. There's always going to be extremists. Why is it in a lot of situations we can listen to what the consumer or the movement has to say without focusing only on the extremists? But when it comes to gamers, when it comes to this particular topic, when it comes to forced diversity, we can't listen to people saying, look, I just don't want to buy that game, man. I don't want to harass nobody. I don't want to yell at nobody. I just don't want to buy bad video games. I just want to have video game fun. I want to have fun while playing video games. I like fun video games. Sell me fun video games. Focus on that. Why can't you just focus on that? That seems like such a reasonable thing to do. Instead, you focus on the handful of lunatics. I'm not one of those lunatics. I just like fun video games. Yellow Flash isn't. Nerdrotic isn't. The Quartering. Even the Quartering's not one of those lunatics. I don't like a lot of the things that the Quartering has said or agreed or done, but he's far from an extremist, not even close to it. These are just gamers with online opinions that you don't agree with. And hell, I don't agree with them a lot of the times too. Am I calling myself harassed because I don't like the fact that the Quartering called me a fat bastard at some point or whatever? No, who gives a shit? He's entitled to his opinion. If the Quartering said, Boogie, you fat shit, you need to improve your content, you know what I'm going to take from that? I'm not going to spend my entire day wallowing in self-pity that, oh no, the Quartering called me fat, the Quartering called me fat. I'm going to take the advice out of there and focus on, guess what? It's time to improve my content. He's probably right. It's so weird. The victim complex. I've been part of it too. I play the victim card more times than I can count. I did it subconsciously. And now that I'm on the other side of it, it just doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense to my brain anymore. Because at the end of the day, I think that victimhood mentality doesn't make sense. It's a form of delusion or mental illness of some sort. And I'm not saying, I'm not connecting anything else to mental illness other than the victim complex. And that in itself is a form of mental illness. Alternatively, though, it could be much more nefarious. It could be much more evil. It could be a ploy that these people are using so that they can keep their jobs, they can keep forcing diversity in video games, and they get paid doing it. Regardless of the fact that it's costing a lot of fun for consumers, it's costing companies a lot of money, it's costing games to get lower review scores, sell less, companies shut down and close. It doesn't matter as long as they're not being made a victim. And could you imagine what it's like to be the head of one of these studios who's in charge of this decision, knowing that if you tell these people, no, we don't need you involved. We got it. That knowing that they're going to pull the victim card, knowing that they're going to say, oh my God, we're being oppressed. They don't want our bullshit in their video games. They don't want our poorly written, bad representation, forced diversity in their video games. They want to write a character well. They want to do a diverse character that fits in the storyline. They want to do a diverse character that's not being consulted on by us. And that's the problem, because you got to pay us. You got to pay us. That's the important thing. Not that you wrote a character well, not that you got representation well, not that you managed to make people like a trans character or like an LGBT character. It's none of that. None of that's important. What's important is our paychecks. That's what's important. I mean, it's plain as the nose on my face that's probably it. But I'd rather it be the mental illness. Genuinely, I hope that it is. So GDC took place. That's the Games Developer Conference thingy, I think. That's what it stands for. They sent out this message inviting game developers to come out and basically unload. They said the game industry is falling apart around us, and we're all flocking to San Francisco for like a week to pretend it's fine. Let's take a minute where we all stop pretending and just express how it feels to be a game developer in 2024. Now, I'm sure a lot of this has to do with all the layoffs and all the negativity, but it also could surround Gamergate 2.0 as well. Regardless, I wanted to share this cathartic moment with you and see what your opinion is on it, because I have an opinion I will share as soon as it's over. I hope this is entertaining for you as it was for me, because it is. It's something. It's something for sure. You see what I'm saying about mental illness? This is some mental illness right here. I think this level of proof. Now, don't get me wrong. Thousands and thousands of game developers show up to this thing every year. And they only got like maybe 100 people out here, screaming and doing this crazy thing. So not every game developer's crazy, thank goodness, right? But some of them. Clearly not in a good headspace. Now, looking into it, the person that organized this definitely said that this was over the widespread layoffs and as well as Gamergate 2.0 controversy. But again, I would say if you're upset about the fact that people don't want to buy the video games that you make poorly, maybe don't scream about it. Maybe make better video games, or maybe do what you're doing better. That seems reasonable to me. You're at a conference for games, and there's probably game developers there who are successful at what you're trying to do. Instead of wasting your limited time there standing in a field screaming, I don't know, maybe go talk to successful game developers or listen to their conferences and figure out what you're doing wrong. Because here's the harsh reality. Gamergate didn't go away, and Gamergate will not go away. It may have died back a little bit, but you're never going to get gamers to want to play poorly written games filled with forced diversity. And by the way, Disney, if you're paying attention, you're not going to get them. You're going to get Star Wars fans or Marvel fans to watch poorly written movies or poorly written TV shows filled with forced diversity. It's just not a thing you're going to get us to do. I mean, there's a market for it, sure. There's plenty of people out there who are like, you know what? I just care that there's lesbians in it. I just care there's people of color in it. That's the only thing I care about. But that's a very narrow market. Even most people who like diversity in their media want it to be done well. That's never going away. That is never going away. People will always choose to spend their money on things they like. And in this economy, where everybody's feeling the hurt, and where video games are $70 a pop, which can take 4, 5, 6 after taxes, 6, 7 hours worth of labor in a week just to be able to afford that game for a lot of people. And a lot of people don't have the money left over because we're paying more at the pumps, we're paying more at the grocery store. Hell, I'm definitely paying more at the grocery store. You know how I am. They're paying more for everything. That $70 means a hell of a lot more than it ever has before. Most people are not going to pay that money to play a poorly made game, a poorly written game, bad video games with uncomfortable topics that they don't want to get into, addressed poorly, forced into a space that it wasn't even meant to be in, but when they started writing the video game to begin with. You'll always be called out for that. And you'll always have bad game sales because of it. That's the reality. It's not gamers that need to adjust their point of view. Because at the end of the day, a consumer has every right to pick and choose what they spend their money on. You're never going to be able to take that away from us. We don't have to watch Star Wars. We can just live our lives without Star Wars. And your company will go bankrupt. We can choose to play, especially when the East is still developing video games that don't address or talk about these topics at all sometimes. We can play those games and choose to play those, or go back and play our catalog filled. So many gamers buy games that we don't have the time to finish or play. We can go back and play the games that we once loved, that we have completed, the games we didn't get to finish the first time. If you release nothing in 2025 other than games filled with poorly written, forced diversity garbage, gamers will still exist. They'll still play video games. They just won't buy your shit. That's how that's going to work. So if someone needs to change their business model, change the way they're doing things, it's the gamers. Or it's not the gamers, it's the game developers. Fix your shit. Put in diverse characters. I'm all for it. And a lot of people are. Put them in occasionally. Put them in a reasonable amount of time. Have them act like normal human beings, be human beings. Not as tropes, not as caricatures. Have them be humans. Have them do human things, speak in human ways, have human problems. Give us the escapism that we're telling you we want and we need, that we crave so badly. And let those characters be part of that escapism. And guess what? Your game is going to sell like gangbusters. I promise you it will. I promise it you will. And maybe, just maybe, and this is the sexist, most racist thing I'll say, take a look at the demographics of people that buy your video games, right? And realize that that's the audience that you are probably trying to sell a product to, right? Consider what that demographic wants. If they're younger, focus on younger issues and things that young people care about. I think that's okay. Probably get canceled for that one. But genuinely, if I realized that the thing I'm trying to make, whatever it is, my widget, appealed mostly to women in their mid-30s, I'd find out what women in their mid-30s liked and definitely make my widget accordingly. That's what I would fucking do. Maybe I'm a sexist asshole, though. At the end of the day, mark my words. People are saying, Gamergate 2.0 is smaller and more pathetic and more whatever, and that's fine. You can have your opinion, and I welcome you to it, but here's my opinion. This thing's just getting started because you have a lot of people who have been dealing with this stuff for quite some time, and on top of that, gamers are feeling frustrated by games as a service and those games getting shut down and not just forced diversity, but how they're fleecing us at every turn and microtransactions, and the gaming industry is just in a real shit show situation. Any game developer should know that at this point. And on top of that, gamers we're a salty lot to begin with. A lot of us play video games as a way to get our rage and our anger and our sadness and our emotions, and we use it as escapism, right? We use it as a place that I know from my personal experience that I use video games as a way that I can have controlled anger. I'm not really comfortable having anger in my real life. Can't yell at anybody in my real life. Don't want to. Don't like it, so I'm not going to. But, while I'm playing a video game, last night me and my friends were playing Ultimate Chicken Horse couch co-op. I yelled my head off. Controlled anger. I use video games for that. Well, some people don't mind yelling online in real life. Some people don't mind it. And gamers are more than glad to do that. And we're in a frustrating situation. I think a lot of game developers feel it too. I do. I don't think you'll see a lot of game developers speaking out against people like Sweet Baby Incorporated and stuff like that, because the games industry, some of the higher ups, definitely people at Sweet Baby and those companies like it. And of course, the gaming journalists, they'll blacklist your ass as quick as you can say hello. You're not going to get a lot of other people other than like Mark Kern speaking out against this stuff, people who've made video games. But I do think it will happen eventually. I think you're going to get more people willing to speak about this. But the reason Gamergate isn't going away, the real reason, is because this victimhood mentality is so profitable for these people. And even if it's not, they'll feel compelled to try it anyway. Every turn, they'll say, oh, look, somebody said something mean to me on Twitter. I'm a victim. Help me, fix me, give me money. Let me ruin your video game because somebody said something mean to me on Twitter. And God forbid something bad does happen. Because like I said, every movement has extremists, and one of these extremists do something extreme. God help us. God help us. Let's just pray that doesn't happen. I never want to see anybody get hurt. I never want to see anybody harassed. I never want to see anybody even being made fun of on the internet. I'd rather that went away. Trust me, I know it sucks. But I'm afraid it will. And if it does, this thing just keeps going. And if it does burn out, even if it does get quiet for a little while, it'll never go away. It'll always be reflected in your sales numbers. It'll always be reflected in your reviews. It'll always be reflected on YouTube channels and in forums and in Steam curator lists. It's never fully going away. So maybe, just maybe, consider listening to the consumer and creating fun, interesting games with fun, interesting characters written well, and that'll make things better. We haven't tried it that way yet, have we? Maybe let's try it that way. I don't have a lot of direction for this channel right now. I'm just kind of making what I want to make whenever I want to make it. Probably not a great way to run a business, but I do have some other stuff in the future. But I do think this is a topic that I'm very interested in, very passionate about, and I do care a lot about. So I'll probably be talking about it a lot more. And like I said last video, last time I was kind of neutral on the topic, right? I didn't take a hard stance in favor of gaming and in favor of good video games. And that was a stupid thing to do. I'm not siding, I got accused of siding with Nazis and rapists and all kinds of horrible shit because I said video games are supposed to be fun. Well, I'm saying it this time, and you can try to align me with whatever crazy weirdo you want. I don't care. Video games are supposed to be fun, and I like fun video games, and I'm going to be on the side of fun video games, and I don't care Tipster or anybody else decides I'm the bad guy. I'm used to being the bad guy. Hell. Probably the reason I'm successful in the Locale podcast, because I'm the bad guy. I'll be the bad guy. I liked being the real me. I liked being Mr. Rogers. I liked being nice to everybody. But you want me to be the bad guy? So be it. As always, guys, thanks for watching or listening. And as always, I love you very much. I will speak with you again